Hi, I hope you're well. Today I want to chat about 10 signs that you're a perfectionist. I'm really wanting to speak about this because I talk about perfectionism all the time, and I just thought it's important that I share what I think perfectionism is. It's a little more than just having an attention to detail and wanting things to be perfect. There's a lot of ways that perfectionism shows up and really holds us back. I talk about perfectionism all the time because I'm fascinated by it, because I am a perfectionist and I am in the process of learning how to get out of my own way. And that's what I blog about at Smart 20s, which is smart-20s.com if you haven't checked out my blog. And yeah, I really created that blog because I wanted to share what I was learning and to have a way to talk about things that I find fascinating. I'm obsessed with psychology and everything like that. And now I get so many emails from people saying they never knew any, like, they can relate to everything I say and they feel like, they're reading about their own life, and which is amazing to me and makes me so happy that I can help those people also understand more about themselves and help them achieve their goals. And yeah, so I really wanted to chat about what perfectionism really is, at least from my point of view. I've written a little list of the 10 signs that I think, oh my god, my nose is so itchy. This little fan just does it every time. It just makes it like tickles my nose. But I don't want to rub my makeup off. Oof. Sorry, not great to look at. Hey, so yeah, I've written down 10 signs. So I've heard from a lot of people as well that don't think they're perfectionists, and they read about what it actually is, they're like, oh my god. So that's what I'm sharing. Okay, the first one, I feel like this first one probably makes it like everyone in the world is a perfectionist. The first one is procrastination. So if you procrastinate, it's not necessarily that you're a perfectionist, but the two are extremely highly correlated. So perfectionism is essentially a fear of, how can I say it without saying the least 10 things? A fear of failing, a fear of rejection. It's a lot of fear. Perfectionism really is fear. And procrastination is avoidance. So we procrastinate to avoid fear. Fear of failing, fear of not being able to stick to something, fear of being judged. That's huge. I'll talk about that in a second. Oh my god, I need to move this fan. Okay. Or you can see my little pile of like clothes and stuff. Oops. Okay. So, no, I don't, let me. Okay. So procrastination is avoidance. I'm going to do a whole video about how to stop procrastination, but to break it down, at least as far as I understand it, everything I talk about is just my understanding, my personal experience. I don't think it's too helpful to get technical with these kinds of things. And yeah, so I just want to share what I find helpful and how I have reduced my procrastination, all that stuff, which I'll do in another video. But procrastination is avoidance. So if you think about when you procrastinate when you study, often you are trying to avoid boredom, the fear that you won't do as well on your exam or assignment as you hope to do, fear that other people will judge you for not being as smart as they might think you are, fear of rejection, fear of not getting a good grade, fear of being challenged, like that feeling of like, I don't know what to say and all that stuff. There's a lot of emotions that we're trying to avoid. A lot of them are fear, but then yeah, there's other ones as well, such as boredom. So we procrastinate, we go on Pinterest, we watch Netflix, all of that stuff to avoid feeling all these negative feelings. And there's a lot of negative feelings associated with perfectionism and a lot of fear, which is why a lot of perfectionists procrastinate. So if you procrastinate, you could be a perfectionist, what I like to think of as perfectionism. And I don't mean to label perfectionism as a negative thing. I think that I just think it's informative to really understand what's driving your actions, have that self-awareness. And I don't think it's, once a perfectionist, always a perfectionist. You can change this mindset. But once you understand, I'm not really lazy, I'm just scared, that kind of stuff is so helpful. So that's really why I wanted to make this video. I didn't want to be like, it's horrible, like, perfectionists suck, I am one, but also that's not helpful. And yeah, I don't want to become too attached to that label because I want to move on from it. But I think the self-awareness piece is extremely important. So that's why I'm doing this. And I'm just checking it's recording. Okay. So the first one is procrastination. The second one is overthinking and over-planning. This is also really, like a few of them, is another form of procrastination. So overthinking and over-planning, an example is if you've ever wanted to start a YouTube channel, a blog, you want to start working out, you want to start eating healthy, but you haven't, and it's because you're stuck in that planning stage. You're waiting to buy a camera, to think of a blog name, to figure out what workout to do, to I don't know, like if you're planning's great, planning's amazing, don't get me wrong on the planning, but there quickly comes a time when you let planning become procrastination, because planning, you don't actually need to do that much to be able to start. So I feel like everything that I've ever achieved has come from starting quickly and iterating constantly. So not having that, like, over planning, partly we also want to do it because we're trying to safeguard ourselves against failing and against rejection and criticism. So we think the more we plan, the less chance there is of failing, which isn't necessarily true. Once you quickly get to that point where you've planned enough, I feel like beyond it, there isn't much planning you need to do. Also, if you make your plans extremely pretty and like all that stuff, I love stationery, I love pretty paper and pens and all of that, but we can really let that become an obstacle so that we can keep ourselves in our comfort zone. Like, we indulge in that stuff because we like beautiful things, but it's a nice excuse and it feels good because we feel productive when we're planning, we feel productive when we're thinking, but we aren't actually getting any result. And a lot of times the self-doubt so quickly comes in that we don't even get to start on those plans anyway. So there ends up being a lot of planning that happens without any results, which is extremely disheartening, which one of the other ones I will talk about, and I'll just talk about it now, is not finishing what you start. So the third sign, not finishing what you start, is also this kind of lack of, I guess it's partly to do with if you overthink and overplan and you never get yourself into action, you also end up with this idea of yourself that you're not the kind of person that finishes things, and that you end up disappointing yourself quite a lot, and that's not a good self-image to have. The past is just the past. Like, it isn't an indicator of what we can achieve in the future, and you can, if you've never been able to finish things before, you can learn how to do it. And I think being like, I'm just not a person that can finish what I start, is helpful at all. But I think not finishing what you start, a lot of the time, I think that is to do with an extreme reliance and dependency on the feeling of motivation. Part of perfectionism is believing that everything should feel natural and effortless, and if you're smart, you should be able to be smart without, like, if you have to study a lot, that's a sign you're not actually that smart. If you have to try really hard, and like, we're scared of putting in effort because effort in a perfectionist mind is an indicator that you don't have natural talent and natural ability. And because perfectionists believe that there is only natural talent and natural ability and natural intelligence, that if we put in effort and we don't get a result, it's a reflection of our lack of natural talent and ability, rather than having the mindset, the growth mindset, which is that everything, including intelligence and including talent, can be learned and improved upon. So not finishing what you start is very common amongst perfectionists, and I really do believe it is that problem with being reliant on the feeling of motivation and needing everything to feel effortless and natural. I hear from so many of my readers that say, I really, really want to be able to wake up early and have it feel natural and effortless. And and I get it, because I've been there. You want everything to feel natural, but of course when you're creating a new habit, it's not going to feel natural, because you're literally doing something new and trying to change your brain's default settings. Like, how's that going to feel natural? But there really is that reliance on motivation, and I've really focused on developing discipline, which is essentially the ability to follow through with your plans, whether or not you feel like it in the moment. It's all it is. I know people have negative feelings about discipline, but discipline is incredibly freeing and liberating, and if you can make a plan and follow through with it, life is fucking amazing. So yeah, not finishing what you start, that is another sign of perfectionism. Number 4, I have written people pleasing. I still struggle with this. I'm just like grabbing the chin fat. People pleasing, I think, comes as a result of the fear of criticism, fear of judgment, fear of rejection that comes with perfectionism. So it's not driven by this altruistic wanting everyone in the world to be happy. We do want others to be happy. We are good people, but the people pleasing comes from fear, and it's that fear of essentially rejection and fear of what other people will think if we do something that they wouldn't necessarily want us to do. The interesting thing about all of this is essentially, regardless of what you do, there will be people who are pleased and people who are not pleased, which we all know intellectually that we're never going to please everyone. You can do exactly the same thing and one friend has a completely different reaction to another. So to live our lives in this place where we're trying to please everyone means we don't actually achieve very much, because it is very hard to please everyone. And if we're not willing to displease a few people in order to please ourselves, we just end up doing a very limited set of conservative, traditional, boring things, which means that we feel extremely dissatisfied. But because we're not receiving any criticism, which is what we're so trying to avoid, we feel it's better than putting ourselves out there, doing what we want, giving things a go, and potentially displeasing people. The other interesting thing is that, at least in my experience, the people worth pleasing are the people who will be pleased when you yourself are pleased. if that makes sense. So I'll speak in terms of career, because a lot of people end up choosing certain careers due to this people pleasing and thinking that we need to do what our parents want us to do and what our friends think we should do and all of that kind of thing. But if they truly do love us for who we are, this is going to sound a bit corny, but if they are worth having in our lives, they will be supportive of us following the things that make us happy. So we can essentially, if we please ourselves, then we'll please the right people as well. And the people who aren't on board and who are displeased that we are doing the things that please us aren't worth having around. Some people, if they're critical or judgmental of our choices, it's either they wouldn't personally do it, that's completely okay, or they wish they could do it and they feel like they can't, so they want to tell you not to do it, so that can give themselves some justification in not going for it. Like, they'll tell you how much of a bad idea it is and how much it probably won't work out, so they can feel a bit better about the fact that they've never truly given anything a shot, or they have and they've failed, and that it can sometimes come from this sense of wanting to protect someone, which I don't think is particularly helpful. It's, I think, a natural instinct to want to protect the ones we love, but we all know that the best way to support people that we love is to encourage them and not to protect them. Of course, it's helpful to share some wisdom and experiences with them if you have it, but to not project your failures and your shortcomings onto them, and to let them learn from their mistakes, because we learn from ours. So yeah, that's people pleasing. 5, I've written indecision. And this is similar to over planning and overthinking, but slightly different. So indecision is this magical place where we haven't yet made the wrong decision, and we want to stay there all the time. So many perfectionists are extremely indecisive and really struggle to make a commitment to a decision. And I think that really is a fear of failing, essentially, a fear of not making the right choice, so that we feel like, if, say, for a career change or quitting our job or moving city or something like that, if we can stay in indecision for as long as possible, we haven't yet made the wrong decision. We're so scared of making the wrong decision that it feels better to stay in indecision and thinking about it and over planning and overthinking, which I was talking about earlier. But I really believe that indecision is incredibly draining and incredibly frustrating and not very helpful. If I look back on big decisions I've made, even regardless of how long I thought about it or tossed up the decision, I normally end up going with the decision that was my gut instinct. So being in indecision is, as I was saying, so draining. Think of when you're trying to pick an outfit for the day and you're like, oh, should I wear this top? Oh, that looks crap. Oh, I don't know about this. And then it's so draining. And having that about big life decisions is also incredibly draining. And even just little ones, even if you're doing it just with going to the gym, or I might go to the gym today, I'm not sure what time, maybe I'll go after dinner, but then I might be tired, and all of this, maybe I'll go now, maybe I won't. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm thinking about going to the gym today. Are you going or are you not going? Make a time and go. That's discipline, and you have to practice that skill, and that's something I talk about all the time. But indecision just keeps us in this place of not having made the wrong decision yet, and we kind of feel productive because we're thinking about it, but we're not really. and we really don't need much information to make a decision. And I would say we have that information very quickly, and then it just becomes this indecision, and we're just scared. We're really just scared. Indecision is another form of procrastination. Everything in this list is procrastination in one form or another, I feel. So next I've written the all or nothing mentality, and I'm gonna have a sip of my coffee. Just one second. Oh, it's getting a little cold. So all or nothing is, as I've mentioned earlier, part of perfectionism. And I was saying that it's partly due to a reliance on feeling motivated, but I think it's also on this attachment to results. So just checking. So the all or nothing, we're all when we feel motivated, and this they also probably correlate / match up. When we feel motivated and when we feel like we're going to get the result that we want. And then we go to nothing when we feel like we're not going to get the result we want, so that the effort would be wasted. And perfectionism is frustrating because it's constantly struggle with no result, because there's such an attachment on result that we can't stay consistent, because we only think we should do something if it's worth it and if we can stick to it, and struggle to see the value in doing and showing up in and of itself. And I really think that is where the all or nothing comes from. And in my video I did on how I stay fit and healthy, I really talk about how I stay consistent and how I got out of the all or nothing mentality is by shifting my focus from results to the process. And the way that I did that was changing my focus from an appearance-based goal to a performance-based goal. Because with the performance-based goal, the mindset I had around performance stuff is a lot healthier and closer to reality. I believe that to get stronger, it takes time and consistent effort. Whereas with appearance, I have a more warped belief that you should get results quickly. Like, I know intellectually it's going to take time, but thanks to the media and social media and all of that kind of stuff, it really seems like people get results so quickly, and I need to be getting them too. And if I'm not getting them, it's not worth it. But if I focus on strength, my mindset is a lot more process based, and that has helped me so much. I have written down for number 7, fear of what other people think. Fear of judgment, essentially. This is similar to people pleasing, but kind of different. I'm just like leaning in. I really just move around when I talk. I'm moving this fan back at the risk of it tickling my nose because I'm getting hot. So, fear of what other people will think. I used to let this drive everything that I do. I was so scared of what other people think. I can't even describe it. You probably know the feeling. I particularly talk about this on my blog when it comes to blogging. I don't talk about blogging much because, just as a side note, I feel like so many people start a blog about a topic that really interests them, then they get good at blogging, and then they talk about blogging and they don't talk about the thing they're interested in. I want to keep talking about this kind of stuff, the thing I'm interested in. I've gotten better at blogging and I get a lot of blogging questions, but there are so many more people that's their thing. It's not my thing. I find all the technical side of blogging very draining. And I want to talk about perfectionism and psychology and self-development and books and not blogging. So anyway, but I did a post about how I quit my full-time job for blogging. more so about how I finally got out of my own way and stopped letting all of this perfectionism stuff stop me from doing what I really, really, really wanted to do. So it's not really about blogging. There's no blogging advice. It's more so just advice on how to figure out what you want to do, or how I did it, and all the fears I had. And I also did a blog post about the 7 fears that I had before I started blogging and why I did it anyway. I'll link it below. But that again isn't about blogging. It's just about perfectionism and how blogging, like I have, through the process of having a blog, which is essentially just a process of like having something to make me put myself out there, I have learned so much about myself. I didn't know I was a perfectionist before I started my blog. Like, I mean, I had all these signs, but I hadn't realized. And then blogging, starting a YouTube channel, starting a business, they say it's the best way to learn about yourself because it brings up all your fear and all your self-doubt. And it definitely did very quickly. And a huge one for me was being scared of what other people will think. Because of that, I didn't share my blog with anyone in my real life for a long time. Even now, sometimes when I'm talking about it, I find myself like I'm proud of what I do, and I get so many lovely emails from people that have just shared how much I have helped them, and that really does help keep me going. But even when I'm telling someone I've never told about it before, I'm like, oh yeah, it's this thing, you know, like it's like a personal development, and I just get so apologetic, so withdrawn about it. Like I'm more aware of it now, but I really find myself wanting to be like, because it's different. Not that many people in my day-to-day life have a blog. Even fewer have quit their full-time job that they had 2 uni degrees to get, to do something that you don't need any degree to do, and left that job for doing something like this. So when I talk about it, and people have all different kinds of questions too. By now I've heard most of them. No one has ever said anything, some people don't understand it, but no one has ever said, like, I've never had a bad experience. It makes me not want to tell anyone. But it's just this fear of what other people will think. Brene Brown, who is amazing. I wish we were related because I'm Sam Brown, but it's a lot of Browns. She has many amazing books. One of them is called Daring Greatly. I haven't read the other ones. I can see Daring Greatly is right on my shelf. But I think she has one about imperfection, which I should probably read. And anyway, she was saying, either in the book or in an interview, I listen to so many podcasts and I've heard a lot of her interviews. She's so good. She was talking about the fear of what other people will think. And I think this is true of fear. When it's this vague, what other people will think, it feels overwhelming. And if you make it extremely specific, like any fear, if you make it specific, it's so much more manageable. But if it's this fear of something that just seems like fear of what other people will think, like who are the other people? She has this thing where I think she said she got like a piece of paper, like, I'm trying to do like a little square, that size-ish. It's so hard on camera when it's the reverse, like that size. She got a piece of paper that size and wrote down the names of the people whose opinion she cared about. So she had this fear of what other people would think. And she, I think, was talking about it in terms of vulnerability. She speaks a lot about vulnerability, which is why she's so amazing. But she was saying, like, she had this fear, and then she got really specific and was like, okay, well, who are these other people that I actually care about what they think? She just wrote this little piece of paper, and I don't know if it was like her husband and a few other people whose opinions she cared about. And then she just keeps that as a reminder. I hope I haven't botched that story. That's what I've taken away from a story. Sometimes it doesn't even matter what the real story is. It's what you take away from it, you know? You feel me? So that's what I took away from that getting specific about, okay, well, these are the people, like I have, when I'm thinking about making a big life decision now, I obviously care what Steve thinks. He's incredibly supportive though, so it's never an obstacle, but he also gives good critical feedback. He's not just a yes man, but he is very supportive and I love him very much. And there are a few of my friends and a few of my family members, and that's about it in terms of, there are very few people, when I actually think about it, that if they were displeased with my decision or told me something really negative or criticized me, that it would really have an impact. And then there are other people where it's, you know, a lot of perfectionism is fear of judgment, and we want everyone to think we're perfect, which means we only do things that we're already going to be good at, and we overcommit to a lot of things and have a lot of things we're balancing because we want it to look like we can flawlessly handle 20 million things at once. But getting clear on like this fear of what other people will think and making a decision, like that was one of the biggest obstacles for me in pursuing blogging, was this vague fear of what other people will think. And actually, anecdotally, I found that I was extremely surprised. Like, I don't know that I should have been surprised, but I was extremely surprised by how supportive everyone was. I'm sure people have shared their moments of doubt behind my back, but who cares about that? But to my face, which is only like what will affect me, if I let it, people have been so supportive. And when I had this vague fear of what other people will think, and then it turned out that they didn't even think anything bad. Like, not that it mattered, but they didn't. Blows my mind. So the way that we can create something out of absolutely nothing, and that we have this idea that everyone will think negative things, and then it actually happens and they don't. But when I finally decided to take a leap, I really just got clear. Like, the main thing that helped me move forward, that I've spoken about already, was doing an exercise called fear setting, which Tim Ferriss talks about. He talks about in his book Tools of Titans, which I've also talked about. But it's basically just an exercise to get really clear on your fear and to really have a look at whether it's as probable and irreversible and as bad as you're making it out to be in your mind. And the exercise is just a journaling, it's just a few questions to answer, and you write them down, because your brain is so much more helpful when you have to write things down, because it's forced to articulate and you can't have all these things swelling at once. You are forced to make it a bit more coherent and to put words to the feelings. So before I did that exercise, I thought the thing that was stopping me was fear of what other people will think, because that's what it felt like, and I never got specific about it. 1 second. So that's what I thought the fear was. Then when I did this exercise, and there's a worksheet that I've got the exercise in, I'll link it as well below. I realized I wasn't actually scared of what other people will think. Like, that really wasn't what was holding me back. My fear that I hadn't even realized I had was that I would pursue my blog and business, it would fail. And that wasn't I wasn't scared of that. I was scared that it would fail, and that the failure would put pressure on my relationship with Steve, because if it failed, I would have a certain degree of financial dependence on him, and I would essentially not be contributing as much to the relationship. This is just in my eyes, not necessarily true. But I was worried that the failing would put strain on our relationship, and therefore that it would lead our relationship to end, which I don't want to happen. And so I was really just scared, not even about what Steve thought. He's been so supportive. Like, I tear up when I think about it. Literally, I tear up. Yeah, I was just scared that it would put pressure on things. So once I got clear on what the fear, I'm like actually like proper tearing up. Once I got clear on the fear that I had around that, I was like, oh, well, that's so much more manageable. Because when I look at that fear intellectually, like, there are so many things that I can do to make that not happen, and it's not as probable as I think. And Steve, you know, if this stuff failed, he wouldn't just ditch me. And I don't know that it, like, yeah, I don't know how I would grow and change, but I don't think it would be a step back. Like, I'd learn from it and grow, and just so many different things about really realizing, yeah, like that fear, the outcome wasn't very probable. It would be reversible in the sense that there are things that I can do, and that's one of the other questions, like, what could you do to, if the worst case scenario happened, what could you do to improve it, fix it, whatever. So many things. And yeah, it just, then I was like, oh, I'm not actually scared of what other people will think. And for years I had this vague fear of what other people would think, and in the end everyone was only supportive, which, yeah, it was so nice. Like, I really do appreciate everyone that has given me support, however big or small. So I just tear up also when I talk about that. So that is number 7. The next one is lack of confidence. I've struggled with this. I'm going to do a whole video on it. Oh my God, this fan. Need to sort this situation out. But it is getting colder now, but only Brisbane cold. So that still means it's probably, by anyone else's winter standards, not technically winter yet, but by anyone else's standards, it's still very warm here. But not if you live here. It's fucking cold. So lack of confidence, I've definitely struggled with this. Still struggle with it. Even as I'm filming this, my mind's also like, what do you know? What do you have to share? Like, and I know from experience that even in the last few weeks when I've been publishing these videos and I'll put it up, I'll be like, oh, like, no one's gonna like it. Like, this stuff doesn't just go away overnight, but you can learn to manage it and to not react to it. But then people email me, they're like, oh, that was so helpful. And so I'm just learning to not let that voice dictate what I do, because it isn't, like, yeah, not everything I say is amazing, but it like, I don't need to have no confidence about it. I also got an email, I'm pretty sure it was from Laurel, and she was like, loved your video, you need to stop apologizing about rambling. And I was like, preach, that is so true. And it's something I'm working on, but it's part of this lack of confidence thing of, if I'm taking up someone's time, even if they're choosing to watch me, like, I'm not forcing anyone to watch a video of me. They've like gone to it, clicked it, they're still sitting there, they can click away at any time. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry you're watching this, essentially, by what I'm saying and when I'm being really apologetic. And it's just, it's not a fundamental lack of confidence. Let's see if I can explain this. So I have this base level of confidence in that I truly believe I will succeed. Like, I don't know how to, like, when I say that, I have this like feeling in my stomach, this like warm feeling of, this is going to sound so weird, like that it just is true. Like it's just this really strong level of self-belief. But then on the day-to-day, I struggle with presenting myself confidently, with speaking up, because in my mind I'm like, oh, no one will care what your opinion is and it won't be helpful. And I'm just trying to train my brain out of that negative self-talk, and which is a process because it's a habit and I've had it for decades now. So it does take a bit of work to try and see myself through the eyes of others, and that's how I've been trying to improve it. Is, what's that saying, like, you're never as good or as bad as people say you are. Like, you know, you don't just take everyone's compliments and only believe them and reject all the criticism. Like, people, it's more like you shouldn't take on any. I don't know, I'm kind of not describing that one properly, but it's like just not dismissing the compliments. And so if someone says something at the moment, and a lot more so in the past, someone says something like slightly negative, or that's like could be criticism or feedback or whatever, my mind attaches to that as true. And if someone gives me a compliment, I'll be like, oh no, you know, like I'll make an excuse about why that isn't as good as it seems. And I'm really learning to just say thank you, and no, oh yeah, but I did it, and like trying to make an excuse. I've really been trying to work hard at just saying thank you when someone gives me a compliment. And that was something that I've heard from a few people, but in Shonda Rhimes' book Year of Yes, she really talks about how a lot of women, I'm sure men do it too, you get a compliment and, you know, it's this like fear of like outshining others, and we don't want to stand out because like we just want to fit in and we don't want to make anyone feel bad about themselves. And I know I struggle with this, not that I'm that amazing that I'm going to make everyone feel bad about themselves, but I hold myself back in situations where I could really excel because other people wouldn't really excel, and I don't want to make myself look super good and make them look bad. And I know that probably sounds so conceited and so immodest, but I do have that like fear of outshining others, and I think a lot of perfectionists do, and it holds me back so much. Whoop. Like I'm scared to fail and I'm scared to succeed. What is that? I'm working on that. I've gotten a lot better. Just through self-awareness, a lot of personal development podcasts and YouTube videos and all of that kind of stuff, books. So yeah, I think lack of confidence, it's not that lack of belief that we'll be successful, but it's that lack of day-to-day, oh, I shouldn't speak up, oh, like I don't really know what I'm doing, and like just not wanting to outshine anyone and wanting to fit in, which is part of people pleasing and part of fear of judgment and all of that. So that's another sign of perfectionism, is a lack of confidence. And I hear from a lot of my readers that struggle with confidence, and I struggle with it as well. So the 9th one is not, I'm just like sliding right down this chair. Just trying to cover up that pile of clothes. So another one is you can't stay motivated. This is huge. I've spoken about this a bit throughout the video, but I hear, so I have a question that I ask my readers, and I get a lot. I've probably had like 1,000 replies at this point. The question is, what's your dream habit, and what's the one obstacle, the main obstacle stopping you from having that habit? The dream habits that I hear all the time: waking up early, morning routine, eating healthy, exercise, meditation, journaling, being creative, studying, like being focused, not procrastinating. The biggest obstacle, 99 times out of 100 nearly, is I can't stay motivated. And as I was talking about before, a lot of perfectionists have this attachment to the feeling of motivation, and we believe that people who achieve things must feel motivated. And we believe that the answer is to feel motivated. And I don't know if this is because the media is always like 6 tips to stay motivated, but I think that it's so the wrong focus. And I talk about this a bit, but when the tips are like, have an accountability buddy and write down your goals and have a vision board and all of that, great advice. But I would rather see a few more articles and whatever on how to achieve your goals when you're not motivated, because we're constantly told the answer is to stay motivated. So all the time on Pinterest, on Instagram, on YouTube, trying to stay in this motivated feeling, but we don't have it all the time. And it depletes itself very quickly, and we have to be constantly topping it up. So if we just only try to stay motivated, we're kind of looking for the wrong thing. And I used to always think that the answer was staying motivated. I was like, I just can't stay motivated to write blog posts consistently. And I just can't stay motivated to exercise consistently. And it was nothing to do with motivation. It was always to do with everything else I've spoken about, all those fears, all that avoidance, attachment to results. And I think that, as I've said many times and will say many times again, wow, this video, 46 minutes, damn. I, as you can tell, really love talking about perfectionism. The can't stay motivated thing is a trap, and if you're constantly looking for advice on how to stay motivated, I don't think you'll ever truly break free. I would rather myself learn how to do things when I don't feel motivated. If you listen to any interview with anyone who's successful, they will tell you, and I listen to all these videos, particularly on Evan Carmichael's channel. I've talked about this a bit, but he has a YouTube series called the Top 10 series, and it's the top 10 rules for the top 10 rules for success, and he highlights actors, entrepreneurs, musicians, basically people in the public eye that are successful, and gets little snippets of their interviews, which I love, and puts them together in their top 10 rules for success. And it's all about perseverance. Perseverance is doing something after you feel like doing it, and never giving up and all of that stuff. And none of them ever I've like literally have watched every one of them, and no one says the top 10 rule is to stay motivated, to keep yourself motivated. They do believe motivation is powerful. So do I. I'd love to feel motivated all the time, but they all know how to do something way after they feel like it, and that is the answer. And number 10, the final what are we doing? Sign that you're a perfectionist is that you think you're lazy. This directly ties into lack of motivation and dependency on motivation. I don't think this is necessarily one for everyone. I would never identify myself as a lazy person, even when I was struggling to stay consistent. Because I was struggling so much, I didn't feel lazy. But I think procrastination can take you a few ways, and one of those ways is to give the appearance of laziness, so lack of action. And essentially, say if people say to me, I want to create a habit of working out, but I'm too lazy. And the laziness, I'm going to do a whole video on this as well. The laziness isn't laziness. If you're a perfectionist, the laziness is procrastination. You're not going to the gym because you're scared you won't be able to stick to it. You're scared you won't get the results. You're scared you look like an idiot. All of that kind of thing. So you're procrastinating by staying on the couch. And because lazy people stay on the couch, you are like, I'm just too lazy. But I really don't think it's that. I really think the laziness is just an inability to, like, laziness is procrastination, and it can be overcome. And I think the lazy label isn't helpful because we tend to want to prove ourselves right. So if we, and this is why I was saying I'm cautious of not becoming too attached to the perfectionism label, because then I'll want to prove myself right and continue to be a perfectionist. But with any label, with anything, I think we do want to prove ourselves right. If we think we're having a shit day, we look for things to confirm it's shit. If we think we're having an amazing day, we look for things to confirm it's amazing. Like, we want consistency. We don't want a lot of conflicting information, and and there's a lot of psychological studies that we want to be consistent with who we were in the past. So being like, I'm a lazy person applies to so many things. If you're like, I just can't resist a bargain, and I can never finish anything I start, or anything like that, or I'm just a natural procrastinator. None of that's true, and none of it's helpful. So I just think it's an interesting exercise to look at how you think of yourself and how you describe yourself, and if that's how you actually want to be. And if it's not, then to maybe look for a few new labels, and then you can learn how to prove yourself right about those new labels. But this video has gone on for quite a long time, but I'm not apologizing. I love talking about this stuff. I really hope you found it helpful. Just to run over them, 10 rules. No, I do love that YouTube channel so much. I was doing blogging stuff yesterday for the whole day. Blogging sounds so glamorous, hey, but it's not. I was just sitting at my computer all day doing some things for Pinterest, and the whole day I had those top 10 series videos on in the background. There's a few of them that I really love that I've just watched multiple times. I recently watched the one for Drake, and he was like, I'm kind of into Drake music, not that much, but with that kind of stuff, I try to be open to watching anyone, regardless of whether I'm like, I like them or I don't like them. He just had some really good things to say. Check out that video. But 10 signs you're a perfectionist: you procrastinate, you overthink and you overplan, people please, don't finish what you start, indecisive, all or nothing, can't stay consistent, fear of what other people will think, lack of confidence, can't stay motivated, and you think you're lazy. If that is you, make sure you subscribe to my channel and also check out my blog, smart-20s.com, because everything I have, all the advice I share is geared towards perfectionists. None of the advice I share is